Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Consumer Protection and Scams Prevention webinar, which will cover how to protect yourself, family, and friends from scams. My name is Joseph Conley. I am the Chief of the Frauds Bureau at the Queens District Attorney's Office, and I will be the moderator for this afternoon's program. First, we have a few housekeeping items to go over. The chat function has been disabled for security purposes. Please use the Q&A function on your Zoom screen to ask any questions. We will have a dedicated Q&A portion towards the end of the program. And now, before we go further, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the person responsible for making this event possible, one who cares deeply about the Borough of Queens and has spent much of her distinguished career in public service, working to improve and protect the lives of Queens residents. Elected in November 2019, Melinda Katz is the first woman to serve as Queens County District Attorney. Since taking office, DA Katz has established the first all-woman leadership team with Chief Executive ADA Jennifer Nyberg and Chief of Staff Camille Chin-Chi Fett. Since taking office during an unprecedented time in 2020, the District Attorney has led her office through a nationwide pandemic to ensure the safety of more than 2 million people who live and work in this borough. Among her two-year accomplishments are the creation of a conviction integrity unit to restore justice to the wrongfully convicted, which is another Queens first, and an enhanced community partnerships division to strengthen ties to the many communities that comprise the diverse county in America. And now I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming District Attorney Melinda Katz.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to acknowledge ADA Joe Connolly, Frauds Bureau Chief of our office, and of course, ADA Christine Burke, Section Chief of the Elder Fraud Bureau. They'll offer a presentation on trending scams and frauds with important information about how to prevent them and how to prevent falling prey to them. I also want to thank New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection in collaboration with our office to bring resourceful information on this topic. Miriam Aldana Galdamez, Community Affairs Associate, will be offering a presentation on consumer protection today. The second week of March is National Consumer Protection Week, which is a good time to help people understand their rights as consumers and how to avoid frauds and scams. In 2021, there were 2.8 million reports of fraud, and they totaled a loss of $5.8 billion nationwide. The financial loss is more than 70% increase from 2020. As with most crimes, we need members of the community to report as soon as possible. Evidence such as cell phone records can be time sensitive, and it's important to move quickly if we are going to have any chance of recovering money for the victims. Anyone can report a crime. Police will not ask about your immigration status. My office will not ask about your immigration status. We are here to help, and we're here to support you. The Queens DA Elder Fraud Unit investigates and prosecutes financial crimes and schemes involving theft of property or savings from senior citizens. The unit has been instrumental in returning deeds to exploited homeowners and securing restitution for being scammed. Additionally, the unit focuses on prevention through community outreach, with events aimed at educating seniors and the entire community on how to avoid being victimized by scammers. The Frauds Bureau's goal is to focus on catching criminals who prey on the vulnerable, line their pockets with tax revenue collected on behalf of the city and the state, and anyone else who uses financial schemes to victimize the innocent. This bureau investigates and prosecutes a wide variety of financial crimes affecting Queens residents and businesses. Members of this bureau and its specialized units are especially trained to assist residents of Queens who are victims of embezzlement, of organized crime, of pattern commercial burglaries, of confidence schemes, trademark counterfeiting, investment scams, computer crimes, environmental crimes, government fraud, and financial crimes against the elderly. Frauds Bureau prosecutors also speak at programs such as this one to help educate the public on how to avoid being victimized by trending scams and schemes. So hopefully after these types of seminars and these types of presentations, sorry, you don't need our services on the back end. That would be a great thing. I believe that justice must be administered with a steady and a consistent hand. For me, this means working hard to keep communities safe while doing all I can to make the system more equitable. It means investigating and prosecuting drivers of crime while reviewing past convictions when there are credible claims of innocence or wrongful convictions. At a time when fatal drug overdoses have been at a record highs, it means cracking down on drug dealers who mix heroin with lethal fentanyl, while seeking to expand rehabilitation services for nonviolent offenders whose addictions have fueled their low-level crimes. Since I become the district attorney, I made it a priority of working to bridge our relationships with the local communities. We have created 8 advisory councils to enhance communications between my office and various communities that comprise the most diverse county in the entire United States. I believe that the first time people interact with a DA should not be at a time of crisis or tragedy. It should be when we're trying to keep them out of the criminal justice system, either as defendants, by the way, or as victims to begin with. Meetings such as this are crucial to help everyone protect themselves. I hope this information helps prevent you from becoming a scam victim and also the people that you represent. If you need us, reach out to us, 718-286-6000. My email is cats@queensda.org. Thank you very much for participating today, and I look forward to this great presentation.
Thank you, DA Katz. During today's webinar, we will hear from ADAs assigned to the Frauds Bureau, Elder Fraud Unit, and also members of the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. As DA Katz indicated, there were 2.8 million reports of fraud last year. Sadly, this number, as the DA indicated, represents a 30% increase over 2020, and yet another increase since 2019. These trends are always trending upwards at this point in time. We have not seen any downward trend in frauds that are being reported for a number of years now. And again, another point that the DA really drove home was that every year we're seeing an increase in the dollar amount that is being lost. And sadly, most of this money is never recovered. So what we've learned is that education is the key. And that's why we are holding this webinar here today. We're hoping that we can put this training out to you, and then you can turn around and talk to your friends and family members and loved ones and tell them what you've learned here today. And hopefully together we can try to stop some of this scams and frauds that are going on. So what are the types of scams and frauds that we're going to cover? Well, there's too many to cover in one webinar, so we've picked some of the highlights that we can go over today. So the top 5 categories that we're going to cover are imposter scams, which are really just people trying to pretend they're someone else. You'll probably have heard of these at the IRS scams, the Social Security Administration scams, and what's becoming really popular are romance scams. So we'll be going through those today and talking a little bit about them and how you can try to prevent being a victim of one. We'll also talk about online shopping scams and how people are pretending to be online realtors and sell you goods that are either knockoff, gray market, or just stealing your money. We'll also talk about prizes, sweepstakes, and lottery scams, and another subcategory of that, which is inheritance scams. They all share one common scheme, which is the promise of free money very quickly. And then internet service scams, where people are offering free services to fix your computer or to offer virus scanners for your computer. What these people are all doing, though, is gaining access to your most valuable information on your computer. And we'll also talk about business and job opportunity scams and the explosion of how people are now working online or remotely from home and how fraudsters are taking advantage of that to get your personal information. And now I have the distinct pleasure to introduce ADA Christine Burke, the Section Chief of the Elder Fraud Bureau, Elder Fraud Unit of the Frauds Bureau, an expert in this field who will take us through these scams. Christine?
Thank you, Chief Conley. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. As DA Katz and Chief Conley said, our best defense against all these scammers is to be on the offense. And we hope that the webinar today will teach you something about scams and frauds that you do not know. And then once you learn it, please share it with at least one other person who couldn't join us here today. Before we get any further into this PowerPoint presentation, I'd like to extend a great thanks to Amanda Blott, a law school student from St. John's University Law School, who spent her spring break with me remotely in the Elder Fraud Unit and did some research to get us all the current statistics and prepared this presentation for us to give to you today. Thank you so much, Amanda. Next slide. So as Chief Conley mentioned, we're going to talk about the top 5 scams that have been reported. And a lot of the statistics come from the Federal Trade Commission. And so you will hear quite a bit of reference as to them and their statistics and the research they do each year. The top 5 scams are imposter scams, online shopping scams, lottery scams, internet scams, and business and opportunity scams. Next slide. First, I'll talk to you about imposter scams. In 2021, over $2.3 billion in losses were reported from imposter scams, which was up 90% from 2020. Those are just the reported crimes that we know about. Social security scams is one way in which scammers, thieves, criminals pose as government officials. You may get a call on your phone. I'm sure most of us have gotten that, where the caller ID indicates the Social Security office or the Social Security Bureau or the Social Security Department is calling you. And when you answer the phone, they tell you how your number has been compromised and that it's been suspended and you need to give them personal information or pay some money to reactivate it. That is a scam. The Social Security Administration would never reach out to an individual over the phone to report such an event. You would be contacted by the agency and not by telephone. Another very popular and unfortunate imposter scam is the romance scam. A romance scam starts usually on an online dating website. Now, this is not to say that online dating websites are all no good. What you need to be mindful of is that you don't know who is on the other side of that chat, who is on the other side of that communication. And while there are happily ever after stories of people who've met on these types of sites, one needs to be wary when something like this happens. The relationship online seems to be moving very quickly, and pretty soon into the relationship, the person is asking to borrow money. They're asking for money for an emergency. They're asking for you to deposit a check in your account for them because they're out of the country. An IRS imposter scam is another type of government imposter scam. You may get a caller ID or a voice on the phone that says they are from the Treasury Department or the IRS, and that because you owe them taxes, if you don't pay right then and there or make arrangements to pay right now, they're going to arrest you. That is a red flag for a scam. The IRS and most government officials are not going to contact anyone over the telephone to say they are a suspect in a crime and that they are coming to arrest them. So the IRS, if you owe the IRS money, you will get an official piece of mail, most likely certified mail, informing you so that they know that you've been served with notice of something that you owe them. Another type of popular imposter scam is a nanny and or a caregiver scam. This happens because sometimes people hire individuals to be a caretaker for a parent or for children online. The individuals online are not always who they say they are. In hiring someone or being hired for that type of a position, sometimes you are asked for personal information or a checking account, a way in which you can be paid or the person can pay you. A flag and a warning when people over the phone who you do not know are asking for access to your bank accounts or asking for your personal information, do not give that to someone that you do not know. And last but not least on this list is the family emergency scam. Unfortunately, this is for Queens County, seems to be the most popular imposter scam as it relates to older adults. You may have already heard about a grandparent jail bail scam, which goes something like this. The older adult receives a telephone call. The call might not be clear. There sounds like a young voice on the phone who is saying, "Grandma, is that you?" Grandma has many grandchildren, perhaps, and she thinks it sounds like her grandson, Jimmy. So she says, "Jimmy, is that you?" It is not Jimmy, but it is a scammer posing as Jimmy. And now the scammer knows that grandma has a grandson named Jimmy, and along with that, is probably the fact that the scammer has reached a person who will do just about anything for their grandchild. And then what happens next? There's a request for bail. The grandchild is purportedly in jail and has to get out soon. And so either the scammer will send a courier to the grandparents' house to collect the money, will send a cab or an Uber to the grandparents' house to take them to the bank to withdraw the money. And slowly but surely, the older adult is giving away what they believe is money for bail. Please know that this is not the way that anyone can be bailed out of jail. And please also know that when and if you are ever instructed to send cash through the mail, through UPS, through Federal Express, that is also a red flag. While cash in and of itself is not considered contraband, sending it through overnight delivery services is not proper. And your package, even if you get insurance, will not be protected if you send your US currency. That is the most common way scammers are receiving cash. There's no way to trace it once they receive your cash. Next slide, please. Online shopping scams, these were the most common reported to the Better Business Bureau in 2021. Almost 30% of the people over age 50 have experienced these types of scams. Scammers use websites that mimic a legitimate website. So in other words, instead of www.amazon.com, it might be www.amazon123jkl.com. If you see that Amazon, you might be inclined to click on it. Oh, I shop at Amazon, or I recently placed an order at Amazon. I better click on this link. When we click on links that appear to be from a legitimate website, we are inviting a scammer into our computers, onto our phones. And likewise, by not being sure who you're purchasing these items from, they could be a scammer behind that fictitious website who's going to send you not an actual item that would be found on Amazon, but some type of a counterfeit item that will not be worth what you spent. Next slide, please. Prizes, sweepstakes, and lottery scams. You do not have to pay money to collect money. You do have to be in it to win it, as the New York State Lottery says. So what do they mean by that? You pay $1 and you get a lottery ticket. When it comes to prizes and sweepstakes and other types of lotteries, the scam is this, that you are often receiving an unsolicited call, an unsolicited piece of mail that says, or a phone call, you're the lucky winner of fill in the blank. But before you get that wonderful prize, you must pay the tax up front. You must pay a fee. And so that is a red flag. Think before you act. If you receive an unsolicited prize of any sort, think about, is this legitimate? It is not likely. If you bought a raffle ticket and you're waiting to hear if you're the winner, that is more likely to be a legitimate way in which you can win monies. Scammers also might say to you, you're the winner of a lucky prize. If you provide us with your bank account information, we will deposit right into your account. Red flag, don't do it. Someone you don't know is asking for your bank account information. Why? Not to put a prize in your account, but rather to take your money out of the account. And it can happen that quickly. So be wary of those types of scenarios. Next slide, please. Internet service scams are unfortunately, seem to be on the rise anyway. By way of example, I currently have an investigation that involves 15 people from around this country, each of whom were contacted by way of email, whether it was from their cable company, whether it was from an internet, purportedly their cable company, purportedly a computer software program. You can fill in the blanks. Each person thought they were receiving a legitimate email from someone. They clicked on the link, they responded, next thing you know, or they called the phone number on that email. And what did they get? They got the scammer. And now with the scammer on the other line, they engage in conversation. The scammer may easily get access to a person's computer who just clicked on a link. Or the scammer now says, there's a problem. For instance, A person received an email in this investigation I'm speaking about. It said they were entitled to a refund and also a free scan of their computer to see if it had any malware or scareware or anything like that. So the person thought, oh, this is free. This is great. I like this internet service. Let me click on this. The person now had access to their computer. The scammer asked the individual to open up their bank account so they could show them that the refund had been placed into their account. The person did so. Wow, look at that. There's money in my account. Next thing the person knows, well, it wasn't a $100 refund, but it was a $10,000 refund. And it appears as though there's $10,000 in that person's account right now. The scammer on the other end says you have to withdraw that money immediately. You have to overnight it to me. I can't take it back once it's been transferred. You did that when you opened your account. You clicked too many zeros. The bottom line is many people on a daily basis are falling for these types of scams by way of an email, through the internet, and they are sending cash to people through the mail. Please do not fall for that. If you think you are entitled to a refund from Verizon or from any anti-virus software, call the company. Do not click on an email as I just described. The scammers know how to phish and spoof. That means it appears that it's legitimate, but it is not actually. And the reality here is many of us are possible victims of these types of scams, if not by way of the way I just spoke to you, by way of our own emails being compromised. We use our emails for so many things. Scammers are constantly trying to get access into corporate accounts as well as individual accounts. And we just need to really be on the lookout for what might not be a legitimate email before we open it. We're also subject to data breaches because our information, our personal information is everywhere. And so it is really important for us to check to ensure to the best of our ability that we don't fall victim to identity theft. Next slide, please. Business and job opportunity scams. Well, as Chief Conley mentioned at the beginning of this, many people have been working remotely and have been applying for jobs and accepting jobs and working remotely. Unfortunately, the scammers know that as well. So the scammers put what appear to be business and job opportunities on legitimate job search websites. They may make arrangements with the individual as to how they're going to pay. Again, they're asking for personal information or they're asking for bank account information so we can deposit that money into your account. And now you've given a scammer, perhaps a scammer, access to your bank information. We've all seen these advertisements below. Earn $5 to $100 per week, even more, guaranteed. Well, is anything really guaranteed? Take some time to look into whatever you are applying for to whether or not it is actually legitimate. And just remember that old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is too good to be true. Next slide, please. Investment scams. Scammers will offer investment opportunities, promising significant returns, much better than the stock market, much better than your local banks. They may involve traditional finance markets, or they could involve cryptocurrency. Always do your own research before buying into or before engaging in someone who's making a promise to you, someone who you don't know. Never give anyone access to your private key, your seed phrase, or your wallet when it comes to cryptocurrency, and only purchase from reputable exchanges. Elon Musk, Joe Biden, Jeff Bezos, they are not reaching out to any of us individually to give us the deal of a lifetime. Just be wary of it. Again, if it sounds too good to be true, it likely is. Next slide, please. I mentioned identity theft. What is identity theft? Identity theft is when a scammer, a thief, a criminal accesses any bit of our personal information. It could be our date of birth, social security number, bank account information, credit card information, you name it, the list goes on. How do they get it? It's almost impossible to know these days where an identity thief is getting our identity. How might you know when you're a victim of identity theft? You see more withdrawals from your bank account. You see charges on a credit card that you didn't make. Debt collectors start calling you about overdue credit card statements. Medical providers are sending you bills for services that you never received. How do you protect yourself from identity theft? Some of the best advice is to know that the three major credit reporting agencies, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, are required by federal law to provide every single consumer with one free credit report a year. That means every 4 months, you can make a request of one of those three credit reporting agencies. You'll get 3 free credit reports a year. What does that tell you? It tells you how many credit cards are out in your name. It tells you how many loans are out. It tells you if people have applied for credit cards or loans in your name. It tells you if you have a car loan that you actually don't have a car that goes along with that loan. So 4 times a month, you can ensure that there's nothing going on with your identity that you didn't know about. Ask questions before giving out your social security number. Many entities still have that social security line on applications that you have to fill out. Leave it blank. Let them say it's required, and then let them explain to you why it is required. You could also visit identitytheft.gov to learn more about different types of identity theft and also to report it. It is really important for each of us when we fall victim to a crime, no matter how embarrassed we might feel, report it to the agencies. They are conducting investigations, local, statewide, throughout the country, and they need to know, we need to know when people fall victim to frauds and scams. Next slide, please. How can you best avoid being a victim? Here's a couple of tips. Never send money. I've already said this, but it's really worth saying it. Do not send US currency through the mail. That does not mean you can't send your grandchild, your daughter, your son, a birthday present in the mail. When I'm speaking about I'm talking about significant amounts of US currency to a person that you don't know. You need to verify and trust that the person that you were sending to the money to is a legitimate person. So we're not telling anyone they can't send gifts through the mail on the holidays. Just be wary about where you're sending your money to. Never send gift cards, purchase huge amounts of gift cards to pay off some sort of a debt. No legitimate entity, business, government is going to ask any consumer to pay their debts through gift cards. Never give a stranger access to your bank account information. Never sign a document that you haven't had the time to read, to go over, and have a trusted person explain it to you if you don't understand the language. Avoid unsolicited offers, and do not click on attachments or links in emails unless you are sure who sent those to you. Next slide, please. Need to report fraud or have any questions? As I mentioned already, the Federal Trade Commission, Bureau of Consumer Protection, they do an amazing job of monthly putting out alerts to consumers. You can subscribe to their e-news, you can subscribe to their newsletters, and you can report incidents of fraud and scams to them. They are a national entity. They are keeping track of things in a way that local law enforcement cannot. Next slide, please. What to do if you are a victim or you believe you're a victim of a crime? Well, here we are, the Queens County District Attorney's Office. You can call the Consumer Fraud Hotline at 718-286-6673. You should also always report the fact that you are a victim of a crime to your local police precinct. It is important for the police department to know who the victims are. As I said, there are many different investigations going on throughout the city. And by reporting the fact that you are a victim of a scam, you're not alone. You may be one of 900 other victims of the grandparent jail bail scam. But the police department and we are not going to know that you're a victim unless it is reported. Oftentimes, if you're a victim of identity theft, The banks or the credit card companies are going to want a police report in order to entertain a fraud investigation on your behalf. The FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, national entity, they are conducting investigations that involve the whole country. They want to know about victims of crimes, and the FTC. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. That was excellent. And now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing two members of the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, Miriam Aldana and Michelle Velez. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Office of the Queens District Attorney, Melinda Katz, for inviting us to speak about these important topics. So for those who don't know, one second. Yeah, the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, formerly the Department of Consumer Affairs, protects and enhances the daily economic lives of New Yorkers to create thriving communities. DCA licenses more than 51,000 businesses in more than 40 industries and enforces key consumer protection, licensing, and workplace laws that apply to countless more. By supporting businesses through equitable enforcement and access to resources, and by helping to resolve complaints, DCA protects the marketplace from predatory practices and strives to create a culture of compliance. So I'm going to share, we're going to go over some of the most common scams. I know Christine mentioned some of them, but let me. So scammers often, one second.
Yeah, I thought your version was clean.
Okay, sorry about that. So scammers often take advantage of vulnerable people during times of crisis and distress. For DCWP, it's important that you as a consumer be aware of any potential scams in order to protect yourself and your money. So be aware of, so these are some of the most common scams, and my colleague Michelle is gonna go over some other scams and resources at the end of my presentation. But, you know, so be aware of the unemployment claim scams, right? So scammers pretend to be calling from the New York State Department of Labor to verify personal information and requires payment to process your claim. So be on the look, the tip, right? So be on the lookout for scams if you file for unemployment benefits. Do not give information to people you don't know or whose identity you have not verified. So fake government relief assistance programs. You may receive text or emails claiming that you filed for free small business aid or bonus grant checks by filing out an online form with your personal information and processing fee. These offers may also appear on social media ads and posts. So always make sure that it is a legitimate source of government assistance by researching the name of the agency, visiting their website, and reading about what their grant process is. So avoid clicking any links you see on social media. Remember that free government benefits do not cost any money. So this is really important. So phishing emails and text messages. So phishing emails and text messages often contains a link or ask you to provide personal information that can be used to commit fraud or identity theft. So always verify the email address or link before clicking or responding. So legitimate government agencies will never contact you asking for for money. If an agency does contact you asking for personal information, seek verification first. So if you suspect a scam, delete the email. If you receive an email, right, or a text, file a complaint with the Federal Communications Commission at fcc.gov/complaints. So COVID-19 tests. There are many healthcare providers, pharmacies, and government facilities, including mobile and pop-up testing sites, offering testing, often free, throughout the city. Find a testing site at nyc.gov/COVID test. Get free at-home COVID test at covidtest.gov or call 800-232-0233. You will only be required to provide your name and mailing address. So another scam is COVID-19 vaccine. So you will never be asked to put a deposit down or provide credit card information to make a vaccination appointment. So individuals 5 years old, 5 or older are able to book vaccine appointments at many locations throughout the city using the NYC Vaccine Finder. So you can visit nyc.gov/vaccine finder or by calling, you can also call 311 actually. So visit ag.ny.gov/complaint/forms to report any incident of vaccine fraud or abuse to the New York State Attorney General. So be aware of home improvement scams, and I know this is especially elder people. It's usually people that are affected by these scams. So home improvement contractors must be licensed by the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. A license is not guaranteed that a contractor will always engage in a proper business conduct, but it gives DCWP the authority to act on your behalf. So consumers are often able to get compensation because they hired a licensed contractor. Beware of uninvited scammers who may show up on your door and point out quick home repairs for cheap if you pay upfront in cash. So some of the tips we provided: only use home improvement contractor licensed by DCWP. Call 311 or visit nyc.gov/DCWP to check license status. So insist on more than one reference and check them. Never pay the full price upfront and never pay in cash. This is important as well. So ask to see permits. So view sample estimate, contract, notice of cancellation and change order form, and file complaints at nyc.gov/DCWP. And so we have more resources in our website, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. You can visit nyc.gov/DCWP. And you can also get free financial counseling in person or by phone. You can book an appointment at nyc.gov/talkmoney, or you can also call 311 and say financial counseling, and you can get help. You can speak with a financial counselor to, if you wanna open a bank account, they can help you with that. But not only with that, they do much more. So again, this is the website, nyc.gov/talkmoney, and you can book an appointment through there. So I'm gonna pass it to my colleague, Michelle, who will share additional information and resources from DCWP. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you to the Queen's District Attorney's Office and for hosting this a very informative webinar, because as COVID, pandemic, there definitely have been a rise in scams. And oh, sorry, I'm in twice, but because of my computer, but I hope everyone can hear me. All right, perfect. Yeah, have the audio through my phone. I just wanted to make that clarification. Yes, our agency has put together a list of the top 10 scams, which were covered by my colleague Maria and by Christine Burt, that gave some great protection tips. And I'm also going to talk a little bit more about just additional protection tips that our agency likes to educate folks on, specifically when it comes to going to a business, right? Sometimes we fall victims of unfair business practices, right? Sometimes it's not even online scams. Sometimes it's just stores themselves or businesses. So I'm going to do a quick screen share where one could just get more information. So one could always visit our website, which is nyc.gov/scammers. /consumers, not scammers, to get a variety of lists of consumer protection tips. So we have a tab dedicated to that. And we also have on the list here a variety of different consumer protection tips that you could get. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about some tips you could follow, So during last year of part of National Consumer Protection Week, our agency put this document together that talks about specific tips that you could follow, specifically when it comes to overcharges. Price gouging is illegal for any item or service needed to limit the spread of COVID-19. So when COVID-19 was well known, we saw stores, right, charging ridiculous prices for face masks, for hand sanitizer, for typical items that would be much cheaper. So our agency did an emergency ruling when it came to price gouging. There are still some stores, that still like to overcharge. So for this, you could always file a complaint with DCWP. If you believe a store excessively increased the price of an item, you would go online at on.nyc.gov/overcharge, or you could call 311 and say overcharge. And you could visit nyc.gov/DCWP for more information regarding price gouging. Also, we are in the middle of tax season, so remember to file your taxes April 18th. That is the tax deadline. So when it comes to tax season, right, sometimes we go to a trusted tax provider, or sometimes we go to a new tax provider. There is a consumer bill of rights available on nyc.gov/tax prep to learn about to have access to that consumer bill of rights. Also, our agency works in coalition with other community-based organizations to have the city's free tax prep program. So if you're filed jointly with the family, it would be $72,000 or less to be eligible for that assistance. If you're a single filer, it would be $50,000 or less as well. So that's also a resource you could utilize as a trusted resource. You could also utilize from the city, or if you go to that one person that you definitely trust, you do have rights as a consumer. You could always click on nyc.gov/tax prep as well. And in addition to that, when it comes to using a tax prep provider, just make sure that they are providing, honest and high quality service. Although some of them will try to mislead you into taking credits or deductions you aren't entitled to. So definitely sometimes tax prep providers are trying to scam folks into saying that they're eligible for certain things, but that's not always the case. And for that, you could always file a consumer complaint with our agency as well. And we've spoken about government imposters. I just wanted to reiterate, it's super important to just be on the lookout. If you're ever unsure about a call or email, I'll always visit the official agency website, or you could get in contact with the government agency to verify anything as well. And you could always report fraud at reportfraud.ftc.gov to report a suspected scam. And lastly, it's super important to protect your identity. Just because, as you see now with the COVID-19 crisis, we entered an online virtual platform. So it's always super important to know where you're putting your personal information, whether it's over the phone, by email or text, or on social media websites. Never click on unfamiliar links. Always create strong and personal passwords and only download software and apps from trusted resources. Here are just some additional links to be mindful of and to jot down for additional recourse or for additional information. You could always visit identitytheft.gov to learn how to protect your information, or you could always file a claim at the ftc.gov/ID theft if you think you are a victim of identity theft and you must act quickly. You could always visit nyc.gov/talkmoney to learn about free one-on-one financial counseling. You could always work also with the NYC Financial Empowerment Center counselor to manage your money, and NYC Free Financial Counseling. That is a service that our agency offers as well. That's also served as a trusted resources. Specifically, if you're not really sure how to manage your money, right? If you want to know what bank's accounts you could utilize to open up a savings account, they're definitely a good source. So, if you have any questions regarding your financials, you could always reach out to them as well. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight something super important. I also wanted to talk a little bit more about consumer protection tips for immigrants, and specifically point out the Consumer Bill of Rights regarding immigration assistance. So we have a Consumer Bill of Rights regarding immigration assistance service providers that come in a variety of different languages, as you see here. So I'm going to quickly show this in English. So I know sometimes victims of frauds or scams, are sometimes our immigrants, just sometimes there's the language barrier and additional barriers that is provided as well. So when it comes to immigrant service providers, there are people or business that charge fees for any kind of immigration related services. They are not lawyers and not typically accredited or recognized with the U.S. Department of Justice. So they cannot give any legal advice on immigration matter, including advising on selecting governmental agency forms for immigration related benefits. They cannot represent you in court or before the federal government of any immigration authority. They can provide translation services, help you gather documents, and photocopy documents for your application. And if you use an immigration assistance service provider, you have a right to a written contract. And this contract, basically gives you more information on what is allowed. Also, you're allowed to receive a refund of free government forms. They also give you copies of paperwork when you file. And, and you have a right to money if you are harmed by the provider. So those were just overall quick resources that I wanted to highlight overall. And I'm going to put all of these links in the chat box, and thank you.
Okay, thank you all for coming today. Thank you to our friends from the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. And remember, please tell your family and friends about this presentation, and keep one thing in mind. If you believe that someone is trying to scam you or defraud you, time is on your side, not on theirs. One of the key things that we're always learning is that people will try to pressure you to act quickly. Please take some time and do some independent research as to why somebody is trying to get your hard-earned money or private personal information. And at any time you ever need assistance, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you all for coming today.